Well, thank you so much for joining us yet for another episode of The Big Question. I am a host, Simon Irungu, always joined in here by the man himself, Professor Herman Manyora. Jadel is always complaining you being on your phone.
It's a disease. I think I'm
seeing the habit.
I'll seek medical attention
for using the phone during the show.
Yeah.
Well, let's proceed to the big question for today, Prof. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga has claimed foreign power opposed his candidature. These are foreign individuals, foreign countries, Prof. Now, why would we see not one individual, but quite a number of individuals and countries opposing his candidature?
First of all, I don't know whether he has said that. I had Odworo Mwen, executive director of ODM, saying during his book launch, he was launching his book, and Raila was there. So it was from Odworo Mwen. Has Raila said it now? Let's say yes.
Let's say yes.
Let's assume yes. Yeah. Well, we must start by saying we are assuming. For me, I've not heard.
With assumptions. Okay.
Now, then we must ask ourselves, if it is true Raila has said foreign powers were involved in this election and they favored Ruto, we can simply discuss it, even if Raila had not said, and look at is it possible? Why would they do so? And the reasons are there for doing so.
That's actually the big question for today.
That's the big question. Why America and the UK would support Ruto. First of all, big powers are good with weak leaders. Okay. If you compare Ruto and Raila, Raila will have a firmer control of the country, giving his international...
Are you calling William Ruto a weak leader?
Weak in that context. Ruto did not have international connections. He was a stranger in the world. There's no part of the world or institution where Raila will be a stranger. He has international connections. He understands the world much better than Ruto. He understands the economy much better than Ruto.
Let's say
he has a stand about things that Ruto may not have had. So it will be in the interest of America to deal with a weaker person who will need their support. Okay. And in the process, they will have a lot of their things going. It will be in the interest of IMF to get a person who they can do business with much easier than, say, for Raila. That's one of the reasons. What other reason would America, IMF, World Bank, and the European Union and the UK have in supporting William Ruto? It's the Chinese connection. Okay? They would very well want to edge China out of Kenya and indeed Africa. And if you get a president whom you aid and is not strong, he doesn't have a base, we shall help you. Once we help you, we will get more contracts than we are now getting. In a sense, edging the Chinese out. That your policy will be different from the Raila-Kibaki policy of bringing in the Chinese. You know, it's the Kibaki and Raila who faced East. So, they can get a new president who can face West. And so they will have a reason for supporting Ruto. Okay. But there's yet another reason. And if you ask me, the main reason why Raila lost, it is because of his pairing with Mother Karua. Okay. With hindsight, now I can see. With hindsight. Okay. Because over the years, people feared Raila because he was Eastern looking, he's communist-like, socialist, but he calibrated himself, he changed, he became a gentleman, he put on a suit, he looked west, then they relaxed a bit. But there are always reservations. It would explain why the deep state and the billionaire class who are supporting him initially cut corners and I think, in my estimation, did deals with Ruto. Whereas they could have hoped and even believed that they could manage Raila, push him away from his radical stand against things like corruption, like overpriced projects and so forth. When Mother came, it became a scare. So the Mother reinforcement of Raila was now a reincarnation of the original Raila. The socialist hard-hitting Raila, who would not condone corruption, who will make sure these contracts and projects we do are never overpriced, all the deals will come to an end. The thieves in this country will not only face it tough in stealing, but they'll go to jail. Raila always was like that, but with the age and with the desire to be president, he had begun mellowing down. And then you bring Mother Karua, the scare was total. Both to Americans, EU, the British, and the thieves in this country. And they must have combined forces to say Raila cannot be president. Okay. That's my reading.
I think that's the big question for the next episode of the big question.
Yes.
But as for now, let us focus on Raila and how the Western affected the outcome of the results. Now,
Yes.
Prof, now how do these foreigners affect the outcome of our results? And you have said something to do with William Ruto, now not focusing to the Chinese, now focusing to the Western countries.
Yes, yes.
And how is that going to affect Kenya, if it is going to affect Kenya?
Well, when we went east, we have done a lot of projects the Chinese have done. But people have also accused the Chinese of condoning corruption, okay, of dealing deals with our leaders more than the Western donors would have allowed. Of course, even with the foreign aid, our dealings with IMF, World Bank, and Paris Club, the London Club, and the multinationals and the bilateral relationships, they were not always as clean as they should be, and many people have written about this. But for the Chinese, it was evident that they were not concerned with matters of human rights. Sometimes the Westerners would halt support if your excesses were visible in terms of human rights and democracy. The Chinese disregarded that. Okay. So one could say there may be something to gain if now we have a situation of competition. That the Chinese will not just put our African leaders in their pockets and do all sort of shoddy deals like the SGR and all these things they are doing, you know, cutting deals in our countries. Because now they know if they do that, the Mzungu is there wanting to do Mombasa, Nairobi highway. So they must, it will be competitive. Okay. So it will be to the benefit of the African person, to the benefit of Kenyans, if the Chinese are forced into competition with the Western fellows. But if they are edged out completely, which I think is the intention, again, those who come in, once they have edged out the Chinese, will also, in a monopolistic manner, continue exploiting us. Yeah.
So now what do we do? There is the Chinese.
I think I would prefer a situation where the Western world does not edge out the Chinese completely. So the Chinese remain, but they are put in check by the entry, a much more serious entry of the Western business interests. Okay. That will be good for the country. But ultimately, the African must take charge of their own country, which we don't do. We give somebody a project, he's the one to tell us how much it will cost, how it will be done, for how long, to what standards. We must walk out of that, certainly. Yeah.
Okay, now, also when he was in India, the former Prime Minister said that the current government is trying to raise money to pay back to these foreigners who actually paid for the campaigns, Prof. Is that, would you read from the same script?
That will be Raila saying, I don't know, I mean, how would he say that?
That is, he said that when he was in India.
That these people are trying to raise money to pay back those who helped them. Yeah. I will consider
That's why they are trying to introduce the stuffs like GMOs.
That's part of what I was saying. If you wanted to introduce GMO and there's a government in power that is mindful of the people of Kenya, that is stable, they will tell you no. But if you got a weak person and put him in power, some of those things like GMOs will come. And I mean, nobody can argue with me. Look at the speed with which Ruto allowed GMOs into the country, using a cabinet that did not have constitutional mandate. Why didn't he wait for his cabinet to be put in place? They discussed this GMO thing, and then Kenyan people can be involved. And then, so the speed with which some of those things are done is suspect. Even these subsidies on Unga, that I would not put their subsidy, I believe is from the IMF. So if those people are supporting him, then they will quickly manipulate him before he gets his own feet and standing and ground. They manipulate and make sure that they have installed certain things, like policies be put in place, like on GMOs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Prof, the GMO issue,
Yes.
Is it something that, do you see it going through? Or do you see it being
But
stopped?
if the president and his cabinet, the cabinet has already approved.
That's why we have the opposition, Professor. These are people who are supposed to oppose some of this stuff.
Let me tell you, this country does not have an opposition. Does not have an opposition. You know what Ruto has done? He has taken politics of this country to another level. And unless Kalonzo Musyoka, if he wants to be president, and Kina Raila, if they want, unless they accept and see that, they will never play in this politics. They can only hope on maybe something, the citizen taking things into their own hands. But in terms of competitive politics, Ruto has put it at a level you cannot very easily play. The common denominator in our politics today is that the politics has been corrupted beyond repair. And the money has such a central place in our politics today. I don't see an opposition in this country operating. They cannot operate. Because money has been given such a central place that I don't see how Kalonzo and Raila can engage competitively in our politics today. Because the kind of money they will require, the kind of resources they will require to be able to competitively be in this game, they will not.
Okay, now, Prof, since we are talking about Raila, will you be surprised if we see him ending up in Ruto's government? Is there a possibility?
If Raila were to end up in Ruto's government, in whichever form, whether handshake, nusum, whatever it is, first of all, in assessing that, you look at what circumstances will have led to that. If there are circumstances similar to the Nusumukata of Kibaki, then you would understand. But if he just went into that, he will surprise many people. I will be among those who will be surprised.
Okay.
And I'm sure there will be many people who will be annoyed. Raila lost a lot of his following because of the handshake. That is obvious.
But when he moves to that government...
Now, if he moves to this government in a similar manner, he will end his political career
does he have
in a disaster.
Will he lose anything? He's already, I don't think he's not going to be competing for another presidential election. Will he lose anything?
How sure are you?
Moves to the
How
government?
sure are you?
Will he? Do you think he will?
He can. What will stop him?
Okay. Now, as we wrap up the conversation, Prof, quite a number of people, especially from the opposition side, you've said there is no opposition, are saying that William Ruto, currently the decisions that he is making to curb the issues that are affecting Kenyans are decisions that are going just a survival tactic to keep him in powers in the next 5 years while he's campaigning already for 2027. Would you read from the scenes?
You know what Ruto has done is to try and pacify the country politically. You see the way he has moved to neutralize, Northeastern, the people and some Azimio, coalition partners. He has brought them in Kenya Kwanza and he's moving to Nyanza. He's pacifying the country. He's consolidating his political power. And that's why I'm saying, if you were to compete against William Ruto, you stand no chance from a political platform. But politics doesn't work like that. You may consolidate the politicians, pull them together, but the citizens of the country may not allow you to do another term. They could have discovered the things you are telling them were lies. The pain they will be going through, they may be going through. You may have their politicians, but they will desert you. So that's how politics works.
Well, let's wrap up the conversation at that. Well, thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of The Big Question. That is Prof pouring knowledge and knowledge after knowledge. Now, the next episode, join us in finding out how Martha Karua costed Raila's presidency. That is Professor Herman Manyora who has stated that, not me. Well, till you have the next episode of The Big Question, enjoy the rest of your day.